Stop whatever you're doing right now, because the next few minutes could genuinely change the trajectory of your health in ways that no prescription, no specialist visit, and no expensive supplement has ever offered you. I know that sounds bold, but when a 28-year study tracking over 116,000 real adults produces a 61% reduction in cancer risk through daily habits alone, bold stops being an opinion and starts being a biological fact. I'm Dr. William Lee, vascular biologist, cancer researcher, and the author of research that has spent over 2 decades asking one question: what does the human body actually need to defend itself against cancer? Today, I'm giving you the 5 most evidence-backed answers to that question, ranked from powerful to absolutely transformational. And before we get there, I need you to know this. Number 1 on this list is something 90% of adults over 60 are getting completely wrong, and the research suggests that fixing just that one thing could cut cancer risk nearly in half on its own. So stay with me all the way through, because the order here is intentional. Each habit builds on the one before it. But first, a genuine question for you. Leave a comment right now telling me your age and whether a doctor has ever sat down with you to talk about cancer prevention, not detection, prevention. I read every single comment, and your answers directly shape the content I create each week. Now let's get into it. Number 5 is the habit that almost everyone writes off as too basic to matter, and that dismissal is quietly doing serious biological damage. I'm talking about cold water hydration, specifically drinking 16 to 20 ounces of cold or room temperature filtered water the moment you wake up, before your coffee, before food, before you check a single notification on your phone. I know what you're thinking. Water. Really? But hear the mechanism out, because the science behind this one is far more sophisticated than it appears on the surface. After the age of 55, something called interoceptive thirst sensitivity begins to decline. In plain language, your brain becomes progressively worse at detecting when your cells are running dry. A 2019 study out of the University of Barcelona found that adults over 60 are chronically operating at 8 to 12% below optimal cellular hydration without ever registering thirst. They simply don't feel it. Now here's why that matters for cancer specifically. Your lymphatic system functions like the body's internal sanitation department, collecting cellular waste, clearing damaged DNA fragments, and maintaining the kind of clean internal environment that makes cancer initiation far more difficult. That entire system runs almost entirely on water. When you're chronically dehydrated, the trucks slow down, waste accumulates, inflammation climbs, and chronic low-grade systemic inflammation is now understood to be one of the primary upstream drivers of cancer, particularly colorectal, bladder, and kidney cancers. The Harvard Nurses' Health Study found that women who consumed more than 5 glasses of water daily had a 45% lower risk of developing colon cancer compared to those drinking 2 or fewer glasses. That is an extraordinary risk reduction for something that costs nothing. Hydration after 65 also directly supports a process called autophagy, which is essentially your cell's internal quality control system. Think of it as a miniaturized inspector inside every cell, identifying and dismantling damaged components before they have the chance to mutate. After 65, autophagy efficiency drops by roughly 30%. But proper hydration has been shown in multiple studies to partially restore that function, essentially slowing the clock on one of cancer's earliest access points. The right way to do this: place a 20-ounce glass of filtered water on your nightstand tonight. Tomorrow morning, before your feet leave the bedside, drink all of it. Add a squeeze of fresh lemon if you prefer it. The D-limonene in lemon peel carries its own anti-tumor properties we'll return to shortly. And your synergy tip for number 5. Pair your morning hydration with 10 minutes of light movement immediately after, even just walking through your home, because movement activates lymphatic flow and compounds the cellular cleansing effect by up to 40%, according to research from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. Water alone is powerful. Water plus movement is a different category entirely. Number 4 has been eaten across every long-lived population on Earth for thousands of years. Western medicine dismissed it for decades, and it is now the subject of more than 200 peer-reviewed studies examining its role in cancer prevention. I'm talking about fermented foods, specifically naturally fermented options like plain yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, and miso. Not pasteurized, not shelf-stable packaged varieties that have had their live cultures cooked out of them. The real thing. In 2021, a landmark study from Stanford University School of Medicine, published in the journal Cell, found that adults consuming high fermented food diets showed dramatically increased microbial diversity in the gut and a measurable reduction in 19 distinct inflammatory proteins, several of which are directly implicated in cancer progression. That's not a correlation, that's a biological cascade, and it's happening at the cellular level. Here's the aging-specific detail that makes this urgent for anyone over 50. After 60, intestinal permeability increases. The lining of your gut, which under healthy conditions functions as a tightly controlled border, begins to develop microscopic gaps. Bacterial toxins, called lipopolysaccharides, migrate through those gaps into your bloodstream, triggering the kind of systemic, low-level inflammation that essentially acts as fertilizer for precancerous cells. I worked with a patient named Margaret, 67 years old from Asheville, North Carolina, who had a genuinely healthy diet in most respects: vegetables, lean proteins, minimal processed food. But she had zero fermented foods. Zero. Her inflammatory markers were elevated, her energy was poor, and her family history of colorectal cancer had her oncologist watching closely. We added 2 daily servings, morning kefir and a small portion of sauerkraut at lunch. Within 90 days, her C-reactive protein levels, a primary inflammation marker, dropped by 38%. Her gastroenterologist told her it was the most significant dietary intervention result he had seen in years. The mechanism runs through something called butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid produced when beneficial gut bacteria ferment dietary fiber. Butyrate literally signals precancerous colon cells to undergo apoptosis, which means it instructs them to self-destruct before they can cause harm. Think of it like a security officer who quietly removes the troublemakers before they can start a fire. 1 to 2 servings of naturally fermented food daily is the target. Look for live and active cultures on the label. And here's your synergy tip. Pair your fermented foods with prebiotic-rich ingredients like garlic, leeks, or slightly underripe bananas, because prebiotics feed the beneficial bacteria that fermented foods introduce. The two together compound the effect dramatically compared to either one alone. Number 3 is something you've almost certainly heard of, but I promise you haven't heard it framed in a way that shows you what it's actually doing at the metabolic level. And once you understand that, you'll never think of it as optional again. I'm talking about daily walking, not casual strolling, not walking laps between your desk and the kitchen. I'm talking about what researchers now specifically call metabolic walking, and the distinction between that and ordinary movement could literally be the difference between an environment that feeds cancer and one that starves it. Here is the science. Your body operates on 2 primary fuel systems, glucose and oxygen. Cancer cells, due to a metabolic quirk first documented by biochemist Otto Warburg in 1931 and validated by hundreds of subsequent studies, are almost exclusively dependent on glucose for energy. They are genuinely poor at using oxygen. This means that when you engage in sustained, moderate-intensity movement that elevates your heart rate to between 55 and 70% of your maximum, you accomplish 2 remarkable things at once. You deplete circulating glucose, starving cancer cells of their preferred fuel source. And simultaneously, you flood your tissues with oxygenated blood, creating a biological environment that is actively inhospitable to cancer cell survival. A 2020 meta-analysis from the American Cancer Society, drawing on data from 1.4 million adults, found that regular moderate physical activity was associated with a 42% reduction in colon cancer risk, a 38% reduction in breast cancer risk, and a 27% reduction in lung cancer risk, even among non-smokers. Those are not marginal numbers. Those are life-altering numbers, and they require no prescription. But the aging-specific biology here is what makes this truly urgent. After 65, your mitochondria, the cellular power generators that fuel every tissue in your body, decline in both number and functional efficiency by up to 35%. That mitochondrial dysfunction is now understood to be a central driver of both aging itself and cancer progression. And here's the critical finding. Sustained moderate walking is one of the only interventions proven to stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis, meaning it signals your body to actually produce new, functional mitochondria. Not repair them, create them. Think of it as ordering an entirely new fleet of generators for every cell in your body. Metabolic walking means 30 to 45 minutes of continuous movement at a pace where conversation remains possible, but singing would be a genuine effort. 5 days per week minimum. Ideally, in the morning before your first full meal, because exercising in a fasted state amplifies the glucose-depleting mechanism significantly. Robert was 72, a retired teacher from Portland, Oregon, who came to me 3 years ago in the aftermath of a cancer scare. A precancerous polyp removed during a routine colonoscopy. He was frightened, sedentary, and overwhelmed. We began a morning walking protocol together, 35 minutes 5 days a week, alongside measured dietary adjustments. At his 2-year follow-up colonoscopy, his results were clean. His oncologist specifically noted his dramatically improved inflammatory markers and described his recovery as exceptional. Robert told me that walking had become his medicine. He was correct. It literally is. Your synergy tip for number 3, combine your morning walk with the hydration habit from number 5, and whenever possible, walk somewhere that receives natural morning light. Morning sunlight exposure regulates your circadian rhythm, which governs immune surveillance, your body's internal cancer detection and response system. The combination of hydration, movement, and morning light is substantially more powerful than any one of them in isolation. Number 2 involves a compound that is quietly one of the most studied anti-cancer substances in the nutritional literature, and most people either aren't eating it at all or are preparing it in a way that destroys everything that makes it valuable. I'm talking about sulforaphane, a bioactive compound found in cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage, and most potently of all, broccoli sprouts. Here is why this matters especially after 50. In 2018, researchers at Johns Hopkins University published findings showing that sulforaphane activates a master genetic regulator called NRF2. Think of NRF2 as the chief of security for your DNA. When activated, it simultaneously triggers more than 200 protective genes. Genes involved in detoxification pathways, antioxidant defense, and, critically, the repair of damaged DNA strands before they have the opportunity to mutate into cancer. And here is the aging-specific tragedy that makes this so urgent. NRF2 activity declines by approximately 40% between the ages of 50 and 70. Your DNA repair system is progressively shutting down. Sulforaphane, consumed correctly, essentially wakes it back up. A landmark study from the University of Illinois found that regular consumption of sulforaphane-rich foods was associated with a 52% reduction in bladder cancer risk and a 41% reduction in prostate cancer incidence, alongside significant reductions in breast and lung cancer markers. But perhaps most remarkable was a finding from the Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center showing that sulforaphane directly targets cancer stem cells, the particularly dangerous cells that conventional chemotherapy frequently fails to eliminate and that are responsible for the majority of cancer recurrences. If ordinary cancer cells are the soldiers, cancer stem cells are the generals. You can eliminate the soldiers entirely, but if the generals survive, they rebuild. Sulforaphane goes after the generals. Now here is the preparation detail that almost everyone gets completely wrong. Sulforaphane does not exist in broccoli in its active form. It is produced through a chemical reaction triggered when you chew or chop the vegetable, activating an enzyme called myrosinase. The critical problem is that cooking above 140 degrees Fahrenheit destroys myrosinase. Fully cooked broccoli delivers almost negligible active sulforaphane compared to what you started with. The correct method: chop or lightly crush your broccoli or sprouts, then let them sit for 40 minutes before doing anything else. This allows the myrosinase reaction to complete. Then steam for no more than 3 to 4 minutes. Raw broccoli sprouts require no preparation at all and deliver up to 50 times more sulforaphane per gram than mature broccoli florets. Aim for half a cup of raw broccoli sprouts daily or 1 full cup of lightly prepared broccoli. Your synergy tip here is critical. Pair your cruciferous vegetables with a small amount of raw mustard seed powder or raw radish. Both are independently rich in active myrosinase, and adding them to cooked cruciferous vegetables essentially restores the enzyme activity that heat destroyed. Research from the Institute of Food Research in Norwich found this combination increases sulforaphane bioavailability by up to 4-fold. That is not a minor improvement. That is the difference between a habit that works and one that doesn't. Now we arrive at number 1, the single most impactful daily habit for cancer prevention after 50, the one that the research has been quietly building toward and that most preventive health conversations never reach. And when I walk you through the mechanism, I think you'll understand immediately why this matters more than almost anything else on this list. Number 1 is sleep, but not just sleep. Specifically what researchers now call oncological sleep architecture, the precise quality, depth, and timing of sleep that activates your body's most powerful internal anti-cancer system. And the data on what happens to cancer risk when this system is chronically disrupted is, frankly, one of the more alarming findings in modern oncological research. During deep slow-wave sleep, specifically stages 3 and 4, your brain activates something called the lymphatic system. This is a waste clearance network, first formally described by researchers at the University of Rochester in 2013, that uses cerebrospinal fluid to physically flush toxic proteins and cellular debris from your brain and nervous tissue. Think of it as a power wash cycle that can only run while the factory is completely shut down for the night. But the cancer connection extends far beyond neurological waste clearance. During those same deep sleep phases, your body produces its highest concentrations of melatonin, not just the hormone that governs drowsiness, but one of the most potent endogenous antioxidants known to modern science. A comprehensive review published in the journal Cancer Research in 2021 found that melatonin directly inhibits tumor angiogenesis, meaning it blocks the formation of new blood vessels that growing tumors require to expand. It also stimulates natural killer cell activity, the frontline immune cells whose specific biological purpose is to identify and eliminate cancer cells before they establish themselves in tissue. Now here is the devastating statistic that most physicians never communicate to their patients. Melatonin production declines by up to 70% between the ages of 40 and 70. Most adults over 65 are producing almost negligible melatonin during sleep. Your most powerful endogenous anti-cancer mechanism is operating at a fraction of its intended capacity every single night, right now. A 2019 study from the International Agency for Research on Cancer classified night shift work, which chronically disrupts sleep architecture, as a probable human carcinogen, not a risk factor, a carcinogen, the same regulatory classification as certain industrial pesticides and chemical compounds. That framing tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the scientific community takes sleep disruption in relation to cancer risk. I had a patient named Eleanor, 71 years old, a retired nurse from Scottsdale, Arizona. She was sleeping 5 to 6 fragmented hours per night, waking frequently, and had been doing so for years without treating it as a medical concern. Her immune panel revealed severely suppressed natural killer cell activity. We built what I call a sleep recalibration protocol together. Consistent 10 p.m. bedtime and wake time, complete room darkness, temperature lowered to 67 degrees Fahrenheit, all screens eliminated 90 minutes before bed, and a small glass of tart cherry juice at 8 p.m. for its natural melatonin precursors. Within 6 weeks, she reached 7.5 hours of consistent nightly sleep. At her 3-month follow-up, her natural killer cell count had increased by 47%. Her oncology team described the result as remarkable. She told me she hadn't slept that well since her early 40s. A 20-year cohort study from the University of California, San Diego, found that adults over 60 who consistently achieve 7 to 8.5 hours of sleep nightly in properly dark and cool environments have cancer mortality rates up to 48% lower than those sleeping fewer than 6 hours. This is not a supplementary variable. This is the master switch that governs how effectively every other system on this list is able to function. To protect your sleep for cancer prevention, these 4 things are non-negotiable. Set an absolute consistent bedtime and wake time, including weekends, because your circadian system does not recognize days off. Make your sleeping environment completely dark. Even minor ambient light measurably suppresses melatonin production. Cool your room to between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. And stop eating at least 3 hours before sleep, because active digestion competes directly with the cellular repair processes your body needs to prioritize during those hours. Your synergy tip for number 1, combine your sleep optimization with the morning sunlight exposure from the walking habit in number 3. Morning light is what anchors and calibrates your circadian rhythm, and a properly anchored rhythm directly amplifies your evening melatonin output. The 2 habits working in coordination create a biological environment that is genuinely inhospitable to cancer progression, and it costs nothing to implement starting tonight. Every study referenced throughout this video is linked below. Read them, bring them to your doctor, ask the questions that appointment time often doesn't accommodate. Because here is what I most want you to take from these 4 minutes. You are not too old for prevention. The science carries no age limit. Whether you are 55 or 85, whether you have faced a cancer diagnosis or never given prevention a second thought, your body retains a profound and documented capacity to heal, to defend, and to regenerate when you provide the conditions it was designed to function in. Morning hydration, daily fermented foods, metabolic walking, sulforaphane, restorative sleep. These are not experimental protocols. They are not fringe interventions. They are the biological baseline your cells have been waiting for. They cost almost nothing. They require no physician authorization. And every morning you wake up is another opportunity to begin. Your independence, your quality of life, your ability to be fully present for the people who matter most to you, that is worth a glass of water, a bowl of kefir, 30 minutes of walking, and a bedtime. Do not let anyone tell you it is too late. The research says otherwise, and so do I.